Now, our men's Bible study have been studying the Psalms, and as I was preparing my sermon earlier in the week and thinking about the men's group, I came across the very entry words of Psalm 84, which was our study psalm for that week. And I had planned to talk about how we make words living words, words that are alive. And hear what the psalmist says. How lovely is your dwelling place, O Lord of hosts. My soul longs, indeed it faints for the courts of the Lord. My heart and my flesh sing for joy to the living God. The living God. Hear these words. Consider them. Well, this is the season of weddings, by the way. This is when people often say wonderful words to one another about how much they love each other, how much they love that the person they're marrying will always be their friend, and that they will always find ways to be romantic and loving, that they'll be adaptable, they'll be adjustable, they'll listen to criticism. And I've often wondered, as I listen both to the words that I help them create as well as the words that they have created themselves, how do we make those words come alive? How do we make them living words? Or will they be like so many strategic plans that companies put together? And I was part of a strategic planning group that worked for the Greater Wisconsin Agency on Aging Resources when I was president of that group a number of years ago. And I said to the group, how do we make sure that these plans, which we have created with a bit of anxiety and a bit of energy and a bit of thoughtfulness, will not end up simply on a shelf somewhere? How do we do that? Or the pledges that we make to one another in a marriage, how do we make those pledges come alive so that somehow everything we say to one another at a wedding ceremony is what we actually intend to have happen in our relationships? Well, we're going to celebrate the 4th of July this week. And I looked at the preamble to the Declaration of Independence. This was not a declaration of unity, but a declaration of independence. And so the nation, through Thomas Jefferson and others who contributed to both the declaration and the preamble, were saying some things about who they wanted the world to see this nation become. And it was a becoming statement. The preamble says this: we, the writers of this document and the Congress, Continental Congress, which is going to vote on it, we, and then they're asking us as a nation, we hold these truths to be self-evident. That is to say, they're obvious, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, at the same time, July 4th, 1776, when this message has now been released to the world, it didn't apply to women, by the way, because women did not have a vote. They had very few rights in this nation, and that had come as a result of what the men had brought from the old country, as it were, or from their place of origin, and so women did not have many rights. You tell that to some of the women who were wives of presidents, particularly Abigail Adams. That message didn't apply likewise to indentured servants, who, while they were here and while they were resident, were nevertheless not free until they had worked off their debt, usually for about 7 years. And it clearly did not apply to the slaves who had been purchased and had come here as early as 1619 as a result of a ship that had been abandoned. Indeed, it didn't apply to the original residents of this land, who at the time the colonies showed up, and when Christopher Columbus found the place, allegedly, they were represented by as many as 14 to 15 million original people who lived on this land. By almost the end of the 1800s, they were down to less than 300,000 people. All were equal. I was told when I joined the county board in Vilas County by one of the members, just remember, we're all equal. And I reminded him that I was not a dummy, that I knew that all were equal, except that some were more equal than others. And that was true when this nation began. Not all were equal. For example, Protestants were equal, but Catholics weren't in some states. Catholics were equal, but Protestants weren't in some states. It was crazy. Some places Jews were not equal and could not be allowed to run for city council or local government positions. Minority Protestants like the Anabaptists and a score of others who were dissidents were not equal to those who were the traditional Catholics and Protestants and Anglicans. In some cases, men with property were more equal than men without property. And indeed, it is true that many people were not equal. So how could we make this a living document? All men are created equal. They are endowed with, by their Creator, with certain unalienable rights, that among them are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Well, you should realize that it took us from the beginning of this nation, even through today, 248 years, we're still trying to make this document a living document, a document that has life because it has represented what we truly are. You remember that on January 1st, 1863, President Lincoln declared that African Americans were free. They were free. But even though they were free, they still were not able to vote. On December 18th, 1865, Congress ratified the Emancipation Proclamation and indicated that even those who were slaves were now totally free as members of this society. And then in 1965, on August the 6th, the Voting Rights Act was passed, granting the right to vote to all citizens, everyone. It wasn't until 1920 that women then had the right to vote. On and on and on, we found ways to make this preamble come alive and be alive with the people over whom it was a part of our Constitution and of our Declaration of Independence. It's interesting that there are so many words in the Bible that I oftentimes want to talk about because I want them to be alive. I want them to have blood and flesh and nerve and mind and an opportunity to dance and be vibrant in the relationship as we try to understand who is this God whom we call a living God. There are, by the way, depending upon which translation, 757,439 words in the Old and New Testament. 737,000, nearly 500 words more. Now, the Tyndale Bible, which was written very early in England as a way of bringing English to the people of England, has perhaps the least number of words, and it is in that listing as a result of the changes that have come in the process of understanding the Greek and the Latin and the Aramaic and the Hebrew. They named, by the way, Tyndale did, when it was first published, a new Bible in English. In 1996, it was redone. 50, 60 scholars gathered together and totally looked at the Tyndale Bible and then named it this: the Holy Bible, the Living Translation, which had sold by that time, or by this time, over 22 million copies. Words in the Bible were originally transformed orally, transferred from one person to another person. And as often the case, something happens to those words, they get changed or the emphasis gets altered. And so the oral translation or transfer of the words in the Old Testament, particularly the first 5 books of the Old Testament, the Pentateuch, those were transferred by verbally. And then it took nearly 1,000 years, a piecemeal here and there. Words were moved from the mouth to the page. And the page was on scrolls, it was on papyrus, and a number of other ways in which it was retained. Those words took over 1,000 words to show up in writing so that people could hold something and look at it and said, "In the beginning, God." So the first word in the Bible, Old Testament, is the word "in." In the beginning, God. It goes on to say God is creator. Goes on to say many more things in the Bible about God. God is a rock, solid and firm. God is a savior. God is one who brings life and hope and joy. I remember the words that came out of Ezekiel. Remember those words out of Ezekiel of the dry bones in the desert? Who of you remember the ink spots? Oh, come on. I'm not that old. Remember, the Ink Spots was a group of African-American singers, 4 guys who were incredible singers. And they put together this wonderful song that went like this. And the toe bone connected to the foot bone connected to the heel bone connected to the ankle bone connected to the leg bone connected to the thigh bone connected to the hip bone. And then it went on. Appear the Lord of the Lord. And so what the word of the Lord said in this wonderful image of Ezekiel is that the bones which were dry, bleached dry by the desert sun, would suddenly be brought to life by God. So up went the words, and the bones began to dance. Joyfully they danced. The living God, said Ezekiel, the living God is one who can bring life even to dry bones. The faith of this man, Ezekiel, who said, indeed, the people of Israel need to realize that even though they are in captivity, then appear to be dead, appear to be lost, appear to be gone from the face of the earth, they are now slaves to someone else. They will be raised up and they will come together and their bones will rise up and there will be life in their bones, there will be joy in their bones, and they will be brought into that being through a living God. not a statue, not a coin, not words, not a resolution, not some affirmation of faith, but a living God who says, come alive, bones, and I will make you dance. I will make you dance. So here we are. The end word in the New Testament is all. The word is all, and there's some good reason, it seems to me, for the word all, because the message of the gospel is a message for all, for everyone. The message of the gospel of love, of gentleness, of kindness, of compassion, of forgiveness, of renewal, of reclaiming, of reconciliation. That message is a message for all. Everyone deserves it. The person who doesn't know anything about God, as it was the case when Paul came and he saw these statues as he's going through Asia Minor and he's in Greece, and he sees the statues, and then there's the statue to the unknown God. And Paul says to them, I'm here to let you know that that unknown God is the God that Jesus Christ revealed to us as a God of love and compassion. And there were those who heard him who thought he was a fool, and others who heard him who said, tell us more. We want to know more. We want to hear more, because we want to be able to speak to a living God, a God who is alive, who can respond, who can offer to us healing and wholeness and companionship and a sense of health, a God who will be with us when we're struggling and be with us when we're filled with joy, a God who indeed, as the psalmist would say, we play instruments as a way of expressing our joy to this living God, because we are alive and we can show our aliveness through our music and our instruments. And so it was in Psalm 84, the writer of that psalm said, I am so anxious to be part of God's presence, this living God. I am grateful to be able to go into his house of worship, the temple at the time. And as they began to grow and understand that God was not confined to the temple, because they no longer had a temple, that God was now in the hearts of every person. It was Jeremiah who said very powerfully, a new way of relating to God has come about. We no longer have to teach one another, because God's presence is in the heart of every human being. I'm convinced that the words of the early story of the creation of humans was that God created us with the presence of his Spirit in us. That's God's image. The God's Spirit in us is that which is alive and vibrant. And so that's how we make words come alive, it seems to me. We give them an opportunity through our lives to show the dance, to show the joy, to show the wonder, to show the compassion, to show the kindness, to show the forgiveness, to show the opportunity for reconciliation and unity, whether it be part of a nation, part of a family, part of a neighborhood, part of a church, or in ourselves as we come to terms with who we are. As you know, I greatly admire the story of the prodigal son, who, when he finds himself in a horrible position, he would be glad to eat the food that the pigs are eating, because he has no food anymore. He has no wealth anymore, he thinks. He has no value anymore. He is a servant. He is useless. He wants to be whole. And bingo, inside of his head goes this awareness. He comes to his senses. I'm convinced that the urging of the Spirit that is already in him. I'm going back home, he says. I'm going back home where I belong. This is home for us here. This is home for us when we come together and sing and pray and affirm that we want to do whatever we can to make the world that we live in a better place to be for all, not only for us, that would be selfish, but for our children, our grandchildren, and our great-grandchildren, and they who come after them. making this a better place to live for everyone. That's our goal. That's what makes words living. So we say to God, bless us that we might be a blessing.